Hello and welcome to the third class recording for our watercolor painting, the Birch stand. The first thing that you're going to want to do today is remove your masking. And if you can find one of these little mask removers, they really do make much easier work out of it, especially if your masking has been on your paper for a while. You really don't want to leave masking on your paper more than a few weeks. If you leave it on there too long, ultimately you will not be able to remove it. And you can see that it has left a hard edge between where we had the underpainting on the birch trees and where we had already previously masked the white of the paper. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my Birch scrubber, and I'm going to dampen that slightly, and then I'm going to soften the hard edge of my masked white. And this little tool can also do a good job fixing up a tree like this where my masking was really pretty much a mess. I'm just going to use that scrubber, soften out some of that white, and firm up the shape of the tree. The next thing you're going to want to do is mix up some of your paints. And I have already mixed mine up. I have mixed some burnt sienna. I've also mixed up some Van Dyke brown. I then added French ultramarine blue to my Van Dyke brown to get a nice dark gray black. And I mixed up some blue with a little bit of orange. I've got some cerulean and some cobalt and very, very little orange. I just want a nice gray blue. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to shade the shadow side of our trees just a little bit more. So I'm going to turn the paper so it's easier for me to work, and I'll lay down some of that gray blue. And I'm laying it down in a lost and found manner. I'll then clean the brush, take out the excess water, and soften that into my tree. I'm laying that shadow color along the left-hand side. I actually want it to be a bit bluer than what I had, so I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that blue. I'm laying that color down as a lost and found, lifting my brush occasionally. This helps with that idea that things that move through space will change in value. We won't see the same value going all the way up that tree. I'm going to continue laying some of this into my larger trees in the foreground. And I'm moving very quickly so that I can get back and soften the side of that blue that's in the tree. I don't want that hard line there. So I'm just coming back with a barely damp brush, and I'm softening that color in. You may want to pause the video and do that before I move forward. The next thing that I'm going to do is take a little bit of that darker brown blue, and I want you to paint your trees where they're coming out of the composition. And you probably could do 2 or 3 trees at a time. I'm laying the color down. I'm then going to clean my brush, take out the excess water, and soften that color slightly down into my trees. I just want the trees to be darker where they're going out of your composition. After I lay down the pigment on 2 or 3 of them, I dampen my brush, take out the excess water, and then come back and soften. And I'll just do those last 2. Clean the brush, take out the excess water, and soften. I'm now going to turn my board upside down and do the exact same thing at the base. I've got to mix up a little more color. It's my Van Dyke brown. And if you don't have Van Dyke brown, you may have sepia, or you may have burnt umber. Any nice dark brown, and then add some French ultramarine to it and it becomes much more like a brown black. Now that I've mixed that color up, I'm going to do the base of the trees. But I want the base of the tree to suggest the ground that it's grown out of. So I'm going to take a little time to make that shape kind of curved at the base, because we want to show that the tree is round. I've dampened my brush. I've softened some of the color. I'm going to clean my brush again and come back and soften a bit more of that color. And I'm going to work my way. This guy comes right out of the painting. So I can just put that whole dark shape right there. But on my trees that are ending in the painting, I just want to make sure that I suggest the curve at the base of the tree. I'll soften that in, and I'll soften this one in. Oops. I'm going to continue working my way across my trees. It shouldn't be a perfect curve like you've got a coffee cup sitting down out there. They are organic. The ground will be moving and shifting. But you just want to start to suggest that it is a rounded object. The smaller trees that I masked in the background, we will deal with in a minute, but we don't need to shade the base of those trees. We'll now let these trees dry for a little bit, and we're going to move into some other areas of our composition. And one of the things that we have done so far is we've laid down this band of red and orange, and it's a very strong horizontal shape, and I would like to break that up a bit. We're going to be coming back in and toning a lot of that back, but I want to keep some of the magic and the pop of that color. So I'm going to begin to mask over some of the leaves in the rear tree line. I'm going to mask by dipping the butt end of a brush into my masking fluid and dragging some of it around, trying to create shapes that in my mind would suggest leaves or foliage. And then we can just keep little pops of bright color back in that tree line. The thing that you want to think about as you're applying this masking is that you have a variety of shape and a variety of size in the areas that you've chosen to mask. You could even take your brush and lay it sideways just to get some larger shapes masked off back there. We're really not trying to get any masking on the front of our trees, but if we do, that's going to be just fine. It wouldn't be wrong to have some pops of light on the front of your trees. While we're waiting for our masking fluid to dry, I'm going to show you how to create those areas of bark that have been stripped off the birch trees. And I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. One will be using a palette knife, and the other will be using a paintbrush. I've already got a nice puddle of Van Dyke Brown mixed up, although you're going to need quite a bit for loading up your palette knife. So I'll just load up a little bit more. And then I'll make sure I've got enough of my burnt sienna and enough of my dark brown black. And what you're going to do with your palette knife is you're going to push it into that puddle of pigment to load onto the back edge of your knife. And you just push right into that puddle until you get a little bead of paint along the back side. And then coming along the edge of your tree, you're going to angle your palette knife and drag down and pull across. I like to put these little shapes coming from both sides of the tree. And You don't want to go spacing them evenly, and you don't want to be doing it alternating between the left and right side every time. But you want to try to get a bit of randomness. This is a nice way to correct an edge on a tree if maybe it didn't mask very well. So I'm going to bring the edge of this tree right back out so that it makes more sense. After you've applied those, you can take your paintbrush and come back and soften some of those hard edges that you just laid down. To use the paintbrush, I'm going to load the brush with the pigment. I'll lay it down along the side, drag it over, and then clean the brush, take out most of the water, and soften that shape down. I can also take my brush and charge in a little bit more of a second color. So you're going to now work your way across your birch trees with whatever technique you feel you would like to do. It might be nice to do a little bit of both because they have a slightly different look to them. And you'll want to do this to every one of your birch trees. The last thing you're going to do for this session is take some of that grayed down blue that we used earlier, and you're going to paint over the trees that you had previously masked with this gray blue. If your masking doesn't come all the way down, that's okay. Go ahead and paint that tree down as far as you'd like. It's not a bad thing if your trees change in value. We're just going to take all of those smaller trees and we're going to make them blue. And what that's going to do is make them appear further back. You can also take some of that grayed down blue and paint over the trees that we wet lifted together. If you'd like to leave one or two of them as a soft white, you may, but I'm just going to go ahead and make these all the blue trees in the middle ground. Once you've painted over the trees that are in the middle background, and you've completed all of your birch tree elements, you are finished for this week, and I'll see you in the next video.